I'm so glad you're here. If you're new, my name is Morgan and I moved to New Zealand with my fiance and dog just a couple years ago. Now I make lifestyle videos about our journey to starting a family on everything health and wellness. Today I'm going to share my kombucha recipe and overall process with you. I've introduced many homemade healthy food and beverage alternatives into my life in the last few years since I got my nutrition certification to replace store-bought ones, and this is definitely one of my favorites. It is actually really easy to make, and we're just taking a few kind of boring drink ingredients and with the power of nature's magical process, creating a whole new fun drink you can customize and get creative with. Now, there are a ton of other fermented foods like kimchi, miso, kefir, and sauerkraut that are made all over the world. And news to me, fermentation has been around for at least 10,000 years, which apparently helped aid in food preservation. Pretty cool. What were they making back then? I like to think of our ancient ancestors having a nice glass of wine or beer, sitting around a campfire after a nice long day of berry picking, but who knows? So how exactly are foods fermented? Well, ingredients are combined in a specific process where bacteria and yeast break down sugar into a variety of new products, all of which include very healthy microorganisms and healthy acids. This creates kind of a superfood. Speaking of superfoods, chocolate is a superfood, and if you like my chocolate bar recipe, I will stick it up here for you to check out. Anyways, nowadays we sadly don't have very much exposure to helpful microbes that aid in digestion and protect us from harm in our guts. We're not as involved in growing our food, interacting with the soil directly, and we're just living in a more sterile environment. And what is more fun to drink than a bubbly drink flavored exactly how you like? I don't know about you guys, but bubbles just really get me. I don't drink soda and it's hard to get a lot done drinking champagne all day, so kombucha is a great replacement. Why should you consider making it at home? Well, so many reasons. Firstly, it is very easy. Again, I don't like spending hours and hours in the kitchen making anything really, no matter how tasty it is, and making kombucha seems to get easier and easier once you've done it one time. Second, it's very inexpensive to make, like pennies. It's basically just tea and sugar, and when you compare it to store-bought kombucha, wow. Store-bought kombucha brands are like $5 for one little bottle and almost $10 for a big one. Like this one, $10. Why? Does anybody know why? I don't know. Plus, I found it very hard to find one that tastes good. I don't know if it's a New Zealand thing, but we've only found ones that are super sweet and not very bubbly. But when you make your own, you can control how much sugar you add and how carbonated it gets. That's a win. It's also obviously better for you than a soda by like a million. No high fructose corn syrup, which I don't think we have to go over why that is so nasty to put in your body, but as we've said, drinking kombucha actually adds nutrients, probiotics, and bacteria to your guts, helping you break down food, and it's actually benefiting you. You don't have to feel guilty about drinking it at all. So let's get into making some of this stuff. The key to the process is what we call a SCOBY. It is this gooey, floppy culture colony pancake thing that is actually a living creature. Kind of cool. Also kind of gross. It has yeast. It has bacteria. It is called mother. So how do you get one of these bad boys? Or girls rather? Well, you can grow your own. There are grow kits. You can also buy one that is pre-made and ready to go. They have them on Amazon for just a few dollars. Or if you happen to know someone who already has one, they can give you what is called a daughter and use that as your mother SCOBY. Because every time you brew a batch of kombucha, it actually forms like a new layer on top of the old one, and they can just peel that off, give it to you in a little bit of the kombucha liquid it lives in, and you can use that to start your process. Kind of like friendship bread. Do you guys remember friendship bread? Like a neighbor would bring you a Ziploc baggie of goo and your mom would add things to it and moosh it around in the fridge for a few weeks and it would eventually turn into bread, like really yummy bread. Anyways, It's wild that this thing will make gallons and gallons of kombucha. The process of making kombucha actually involves 2 fermentations. One is to create the base and then another to add the bubbles. So we're working on the first one now. We have the SCOBY here, and now we need to give it a comfortable home to live in, which is basically just sugar and tea. So doing this will start the first fermentation. We're gonna start this process by boiling maybe a quarter of our water in a saucepan on the stove. And while that is starting, let me introduce you to my SCOBY. Like I said, I've had my SCOBY about a year now, and it lives in this glass jar here. I filled this up maybe a month ago, and it is about time to move it into the second fermentation step and start the first fermentation over again with a new batch. I always have both going on, so I never run out. It's really easy, I promise. Now, there are quite a few ratios in different recipes out there, but this one I've been using for a year now, and it makes great kombucha. I'll put it on the screen now, and I'll also write it below in the description. So we're gonna start out by taking the SCOBY out of its home just temporarily. I like to wash my hands so I don't introduce any new weird Morgan bacteria to it, and add a bit of the liquid to the bowl, maybe a cup. It will be happy just to stay there while we do our other tasks. Then I'm going to fill up my bottles. These are great ones, and they're absolutely reusable. Now this is actually pretty important to be using specifically homebrew quality bottles with a flip top lid. I have used others, I've used jars and experimented a bit, and the seal just wasn't strong enough to hold in the CO2 to form the bubbles properly. Also, if you use bottles with glass that isn't thick enough, that is also dangerous, as you can imagine, because the pressure can build up and potentially explode. So let's try to avoid that, right? We're gonna give our brew a good stir and then fill these guys up. And make sure to leave some room for that carbonation as well as our flavoring. By now our water is boiling, and we want to turn off the stove and add our tea. I'm going to add 8 bags of black tea and let them steep. So after about 5 minutes, we're gonna remove the bags. And add 1 cup of white sugar. I would love to add coconut sugar instead, but the bacteria and yeast combo, specifically in a kombucha SCOBY, only likes to eat white sugar. But don't worry, they're gonna eat most of it and transform the sugar into a healthy, delicious brew. We're gonna mix it around to dissolve and then let it cool a little bit. We want to do this so that the high temperature of the tea doesn't kill our SCOBY. So I like to let it come down to about room temperature. Can I just add in that kombucha is called the elixir of life? As I've said, it is an ancient beverage, and there's definitely a reason it has been made for so long. Minimally, it makes you feel really good when you drink it. Food historians trace it back to 220 BC in China, and it was well known for its detoxifying and energizing properties. So while that is going on, we're gonna prepare some ingredients for our second ferment. I'm gonna cut up some ginger. I add ginger to all kombucha I make. You don't have to. I just love that spicy flavor. I think it really gives it a kick. And I use fruit juice for mine, but you can feel free to use cut up fruit as the sugar portion for this next ferment. Remember, fermentation does need that sugar component, so the yeast and bacteria have something to eat. I've used strawberries, kiwis, pineapple, oranges, mango, and they've all been quite unique tasting and delicious. For me, juice is just a little easier, and you can find organic juice all year round where I live. So I'm gonna pop in the ginger to each bottle and a third a cup of juice as well. Today I'm using 2 different kind of juices. Then I'm going to wipe off the top of the lids with a damp paper towel and close them up. Now you'll want to leave them on the counter for a few days. The amount of carbonation just depends on the environment you're in, so after a few days, just carefully crack one open over the sink, I would suggest, just in case there's a little bit more carbonation than you thought. And if you're satisfied, pop them into the fridge and that will stop the second fermentation. If you'd like more bubbles, then just leave them out on the counter a bit longer. We like ours super bubbly, so I leave them in for about a week. All right, back to our first fermentation. Our sweet tea has cooled, and so we're gonna add some water to our big jug here, and then add the tea and top it with our SCOBY friend. If you have quite a few daughters attached to your mother, I have read that you can actually peel them off and use them for facials, smoothies, pet food, candy, compost, and crafts. Now I have yet to do anything exciting with ours. I usually just compost it. There's nothing wrong with keeping them in there, but they do end up taking up quite a bit of room. So I removed mine. Then just cover the top with something breathable that will keep out debris and dust. I use this big tea bag, but you can use cheesecloth or a tea towel if that's handy for you. Just try to get organic, because if some bits fall in, the SCOBY will actually eat whatever falls in there and it will mess with the process. So this is the first fermentation and it will stay here, I leave it there about a month. I just leave it out on the counter, but if you have a dark closet or pantry, that will work great too. Just try to keep the temperature consistent between maybe 66 and 72 degrees. I like it very fermented. We just like the taste, plus the longer you wait, the healthier it becomes. But you can start the second process in as little as a week. I just basically wait until we've drank all but like 1 bottle and then start the process. One thing you should note before you bottle, just make sure your SCOBY doesn't have any blue fuzz on it. Most other stringy brown stuff is totally fine, but I guess anything blue and fuzzy is not so good. I've never had that happen, but I have heard that is something to definitely look for. All right, so now we have both the first and second processes going, and I promise from experience the final product will be delicious. All right guys, that is it for my kombucha process. So yummy. I highly recommend. Just give it a try. And I'd love to know how you flavored yours. Remember, all of this is a learning process, and that is what makes it fun. And once you get into a routine, you'll just have a delicious drink in the fridge all the time. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm happy to share more recipes like this one in the future. It's just fun to make your own anything, I think. And if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I make new ones every single week. And if you have any questions or ideas for more videos, please let me know in the comments below. I would really love for you to come on this journey with me. All right, we'll see you next week. Bye. And beverages alternatives. So how exactly are food? And what is more fun? Because they aid in digestion. Why? Does anybody know why? That's a win. And start the first ferment. And this is actually, food historians trace it back.